All right, we are live on YouTube and good to go.
We do now have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Do I have my speaker on?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. All right. I now call to order the, what number of meeting is this? Sorry?
419.
419th meeting at 7:03 p.m. Roll call. Will the clerk please call for the roll? Or take the roll call.
Commissioner Tan. Commissioner Tan is absent. Commissioner Dawson. Commissioner Dawson is absent. Commissioner Aberly.
Present.
Commissioner Peters.
Present.
Commissioner Wagner.
Present.
And Commissioner Reiswig.
Present.
All right, and Commissioner Brown has asked to be excused today. We do have a quorum.
Wonderful. Clerk, did anyone submit a public comment in advance?
We did not receive any in advance and we have no public attendees.
Wonderful. I guess we can move on to our consent agenda. Are there any, let's see. Are there any items that anyone would like to remove from the consent agenda? If there are no items to move, I would request that somebody make a motion to approve the consent agenda for this evening.
Commissioner Aberly, I move we accept the consent agenda.
I second it. Wagner.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Sounds like it's approved. All right. Bear with me as I'm working with two different screens here, one that I can kind of read and one that I can't. All right, John, what would we, I can't see the.
So the next item on the agenda is election of officers.
Oh, yeah.
We did do that at our previous meeting, but Commissioner, and forgive me, my memory is lapsing. Ruben Alvarado, who was appointed to the chair, he resigned. He moved out of the area. So we need to appoint a new chair. Todd is acting as vice chair, was appointed as vice chair, and is acting as chair this evening.
And I am
go ahead.
I am happy to continue that that capacity, but due to my work schedule, it's best if I don't accept or take on the chairman position. So, is there anyone who would be so kind and willing to be the chair of this committee?
I'm not speaking up to say I want the position, but I do want to say that because of my retired position and involvement with the city of College Place and other capacities, I would prefer not to be.
Well, Leroy, I thought you were going to go in the other direction because you're retired and you have all this free time.
It's amazing how much free time I don't really have. Not if I want to go to Arizona, I mean.
It's hot there.
Winter's coming, hopefully.
I hope so too. Everybody's being awfully quiet this evening. Can we nominate somebody who is not currently in attendance this evening?
don't think you can do that. You can, but it's frowned upon, is what the clerk said.
All right, all right. Is this something, since we do have a few folks that are absent this evening, is this something that we could table and bring up again at the next meeting?
I think that you most certainly could. We're not super active right now, and we have somebody, you know, you're acting as chair, so that'll do, if that's what you'd like to do.
In light of nobody else speaking up readily to be considered, I think that's probably what we should do. Do I have somebody that's willing to put forth a motion that we table this?
So moved.
Second,
Second, Wagoner.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I guess it is so moved. So it looks like countywide planning policy update is what is next on our agenda.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So for those of you that were with us at our last meeting, I did provided the commission with an update of where things were at with the countywide planning policies, based off of a PowerPoint provided by the consulting firm Facet. Tonight, we have Matt Covert with Facet here, who's going to, since we're much further along in the process, Matt will give us a presentation and open up the floor to any questions you might have at the end. So with that, Matt, if you are, we didn't talk about this, would you like to be able to share your screen, or would you like us to run the slideshow?
I'd be happy to do it.
Okay.
Not a problem.
Thank you, Matt, for attending this evening.
Thank you very much, John. Really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to talking with you all this evening. I do have an infant sleeping in a carrier on my chest who might decide that it's time to wake up. So if that happens, I'll have to just kind of pause for a minute while I make alternate arrangements. But for now, she's sleeping, so I will proceed.
I kind of hope that happens, just because it seems like it would be fun, but maybe maybe not.
John, can you take down sharing on your end? It says I'm not allowed to share while you are sharing.
Yeah, we'll get that going.
Thank you.
Is that possible? Sorry, we kind of have a complicated system here, so we'll get that down.
Okay.
Disabled check. There you go. Did that work for you? Maybe not.
Not yet.
Not yet.
I am listed as a panelist, so I should have the ability to do it in theory. If it's too much hassle, John, you can go ahead and run the deck from your end.
I made you co-host, so you should be good to go.
Perfect. Okay, can everyone see this?
Yes.
Excellent. So thanks for the introduction, John. My name is Matt Covert. I'm a senior planner with Facet, formerly DCG Watershed, formerly Watershed. We've had 3 names in a little over a year, but this one should stick for a while. We've been working with Clay White from Kimley Horn on assisting Walla Walla County and all the cities within the county on updating the countywide planning policies. It sounds like at least some of you heard some on this from John at the last meeting, but I will spend some time here giving you an overview of what countywide planning policies are, why they're important, where we are in this process, and then I'm going to give you a summary of as John mentioned, we've done quite a bit of work since the last time you all met, and we've finished the initial draft that the project management team, composed of representatives from all the jurisdictions, has signed off on for public review and for jurisdiction review. And so I'll go over some of the main policy focus areas and what's addressed in the different chapters. And then we'll talk about the next steps, which is mostly moving into the review phase by jurisdictions and the public for the next month or so, and then starting the formal adoption process. And of course, happy to answer any questions that you may have. As a reminder, from the last time you heard about this, and I'll state it again for the good of the order, adopting countywide planning policies is a requirement of the Growth Management Act. They are meant to provide a set of rules and procedures and ways of working together for jurisdictions within a county to address planning issues that cross jurisdictional boundaries. They provide a framework for coordination on important planning issues like transportation, housing, urban growth areas. Each community has its own comprehensive plan that implements the vision of that community in accordance with state law and development regulations that implement that plan. There are lots of issues, think about like where a county road crosses a city boundary and becomes a city street. Coordinating together can have better overall results for communities, and the CPPs help the communities do that. Now, I mentioned that the GMA requires that the county and all the cities within the county adopt countywide planning policies, but other than the Puget Sound counties, there's no requirement for them to be updated, the CPPs to be updated at any interval. Jurisdictions can, of course, choose to do it, and that's what's happening here because your CPPs are 30 years old, more than 30 years old at this point. And new issues have come up, state law has changed, and the county and the cities felt that now was the time to revisit these in light of the upcoming major comp plan update starting probably later this year. So you're going to be all planning out to 2046 for your communities, and having those ground rules in place around some of these important issues can help those plans work better and be implemented better because they've got some of these pieces where coordination is essential. There's already some structure behind it. And your updates for your comp plan are starting later this year. And so the goal of this project is to be finished up by the end of October, be adopted by the end of October so that they can be in place for the plan update process. To kind of situate where this is in the GMA planning context, it's really important to figure out to come to an understanding of how countywide planning policies relate to the other work that you do. So the GMA Growth Management Act says you have to have a comp plan. It has to meet state standards. You have to do certain things. Within that framework, there's a lot of nuance for communities to be able to figure out how to do it in a way that's context sensitive to a particular community. And there's a requirement for consistency between plans and regulations. As you work on updating your plan and your regulations over the next couple of years, updated policies and regulations have to be consistent with the GMA and with countywide planning policies. As I mentioned, the GMA has changed quite a bit, as you probably know, since 1993. And so, bringing the countywide planning policies up to where they need to be to meet kind of the modern needs will help your plans be consistent with both. They kind of sit in the middle of this spectrum of the planning that you do. As we've been going through the chapters and revising policies and adding new policies and thinking about all this, and we've been lucky to work with called the Project Management Team, or PMT. That's representatives elected and staff from College Place and City of Walla Walla and Walla Walla County and Waitsburg. And we've been really digging into the minutia of the policies and thinking about how new or revised policies would affect different communities in different ways, and what they might have to do, what you all might have to do to implement policies. So reviewing through that lens should provide a foundation for structuring any comments or questions you may have, and I'll do my best to answer them. This is so it's me and Clay White from Kimley Horn kind of taking the lead on this, and Dan Nickel and Laura Jones from our team as well. And then on your end, the mayor and the city administrator and community development director Rickard are all on the PMT. And so just so that you know that you've had great representation and has really helped us understand, you know, what College Place's specific needs are, and it's places where, you know, policies may affect different communities in different ways, and having strong voices in the room has been very helpful. Just to show you where we are at in the schedule, so the way this is laid out shows the different project phases, and then as you see on the left here, that the different chapters or elements. They're called elements on this graphic. We call them chapters just to kind of in the document to distinguish between, like, this is not a comp plan and we don't have to call them elements. It gets a little bit confusing. So, but what we did is we had this kind of leapfrog approach where we would spend usually two meetings, so like consecutive meetings on a topic or a group of topics. And in the first meeting, the consultant team would do an initial look at the existing chapter and existing state law or current state law and what the gaps are between those, and then come up with a set of initial recommendations, you know, just tweaking language and saying, oh, we'll probably need a policy on this, we'll probably need a policy on that, we may not need this set of policies anymore, these ones are duplicative. So we had some ground rules for how that proceeded, but then we'd have an introductory conversation with the PMT where they look at our sort of first draft markups in advance and provide comments, and then we go through those comments. We take that month between those meetings and revise the new drafts and come back with the revisions and have one more discussion, and then the PMT says, yeah, okay, this is good enough for an initial recommendation from us, and then we move on to the next set of topics. We're currently at the end of those initial drafts that the PMT has reviewed for all of the chapters. And the reason why that's important is because we're in that July to August timeframe where the PMT has said, all right, we've gone through all these drafts are good enough for everybody to take a look at, and by the August meeting, we're hoping to have feedback from College Place and from other jurisdictions as well as the public. We've got the document actually scheduled to go out tomorrow, so this is very good timing on this. The complete initial draft, and then you'll see that the PMT will take a look at any comments we receive during the next month and incorporate any changes into the draft for the August meeting. And then at that point, the formal adoption process begins, and I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end, but just kind of to show you how we work through this and the order that we work through it in. I'll go through now some summaries of the last 4 kind of major chapters that we've worked through, some of the policy focus areas and the shared or kind of the goals of the chapter update. And happy to answer any questions as we go. Please feel free to jump in because some of these are, you know, there's a lot to go through here. First one, this one is actually used to be 2 chapters. We've combined it into one because law doesn't set it has to be 2 chapters, and they're very related. So this is on urban growth areas and contiguous and orderly development. That last phrase is kind of a term that's in state law around CPPs, and it's kind of a plenary phrase, but basically it just means does the phasing of development and annexation and extension of services make sense? Are we leapfrogging? Are we creating situations that are kind of fiscally untenable? And then for the urban growth areas, it's really about kind of what are the ground rules for how the county and the cities work together to deal with potential expansions or adjustments to the urban growth areas. The focus really here is really on shared principles, not on getting into the weeds of any one particular urban growth area or any one particular issue. It's more about establishing rules around what have to be in interlocal agreements and what are the sort of the criteria and the parameters around which you can set growth targets and how do those get allocated, and requirements for using a consistent methodology among all the communities. Additionally, the process to be used when establishing, expanding, and adjusting urban growth area boundaries, bringing some of those rules up to date, and then on the contiguous and orderly development front, how the county and the cities will work together to plan for and manage growth prior to and when annexations occur. So making sure that documentation is correct for what's needed to show for an annexation and by whom, and then what happens, when the annexation occurs. How do services get transferred? How does the ownership get transferred? Some rules around that sort of thing. So it's not a substantive review of particular urban growth areas, but it does set some ground rules around which the county and the cities have to operate in order to adjust UGAs and coordinate around issues of annexation. Any questions on that one? You'll get to see tomorrow in the complete draft the specifics of the policies, but this is kind of just a high-level overview of the topics that are covered. Okay. Transportation, another one of the recent ones. That's a big one. This is a classic CPP issue where physical infrastructure crosses boundaries, and policies and programs and infrastructure projects often involve more than one jurisdiction. Around coordination and technical services from the MPO, the Metropolitan Planning Organization, impacts of transportation investments on marginalized communities, ensuring that each community kind of has to each community has to have a standard for what they have to show to evaluate impact of transportation investments on marginalized communities, so that both communities are doing the same type of analysis. Some policy guidance on establishing multimodal levels of service standards that are sensitive to differences between urban and rural areas. This is important because state law has changed to actually require communities to develop multimodal levels of service standards, and sort of understanding that there's a difference between urban and rural areas and how those look. So some policy guidance on that. Consistency of transportation facility standards when crossing jurisdictional boundaries. So think about if there's in an urban growth area, if there is a development that is going to occur prior to annexation, ensuring that the facilities are built are kind of consistent with the standards of what they're going to be when the standards are going to be when they come into the city. For example, it's a kind of a classic issue, classic case. Coordination on collection of transportation data, particularly for the multimodal levels of service. So this is one of those, another one of those, it's kind of procedural, but it's really important because it enables some of the other substantive work that needs to happen. So to have multimodal levels of service standards, you have to have good data on who's currently using what pedestrian infrastructure and where, and having consistent standards for how those things are measured, and taking advantage of the technical services from the MPO, for example, is a policy focus area here. Lastly, trails are another planning issue that crosses jurisdictional boundaries, and they often involve not just the transportation infrastructure, especially the multimodal stuff, but also the green belts, which some of the earlier chapters that we look at talk about when a green belt or an open space corridor crosses jurisdictional boundaries, how that works. And this is a kind of a part of that, because oftentimes trails are put in utility easements or open space corridors that cross jurisdictional boundaries. And when that happens, having consistent, to the greatest degree possible, permitting and design processes can help that planning work better. Economic development was another big one that we talked about the last couple meetings. This chapter really focuses on creating and sustaining a healthy economy, employment opportunities, collaboration on economic development initiatives, and providing predictability in investment decisions. Some of the focus areas: industrial property, collaboration with the port, coordinating economic development in local planning countywide, coordinating with tribes, special districts, business retention efforts, agriculture-based industries, promotion of new economic sectors, new types of businesses, permitting consistency. That one comes up again here, just like with the transportation. So that's a classic CPP issue. Jobs, housing balance. That's another area where, there's a housing chapter as well that was earlier on in the process. The state requires you to plan to try to achieve, jobs, housing balance, so that it doesn't get too out of whack. And what does that look like in terms of, trying to make sure that people who provide employment opportunities for people who may live in Walla Walla County but work outside the county, for example. That's particularly relevant in the western part of the county, close to the Tri-Cities, but this is a countywide issue. And then training programs and access to opportunity as well, which kind of gets at that equity and access to opportunity issue that also popped up in the transportation chapter, if you'll recall. Fiscal impact. So this is one that the state requires you to do. And really this is about where can coordination between jurisdictions on planning and investment have a positive fiscal impact for jurisdictions across the county. So when do the county and the cities need to conduct fiscal analysis on public services and infrastructure? What should be contained in them? What needs to be in a capital improvement plan so that communities have kind of, not the same information, but the same standards of information in terms of like just the type of information that has to be in there. Promoting the use of financing strategies for capital improvements, like impact fees, for example, that are fair and that minimize costs to existing taxpayers. And then guidance on developing a process to facilitate the identification, analysis, and disclosure of fiscal impacts of major development proposals and government actions. So it's kind of like SEPA for fiscal impact. So those are just a few of the policy focus areas there. Lastly, this one's called roles and responsibilities, but really this one is like an implementation chapter. This is an issue that always comes up with countywide planning policies, which, most people probably, if they've ever heard of them in the first place, had no idea that, your current policies are 31 years old. How are they used? Your plans have to be consistent with them, but, beyond that, who implements them and who's checking? Some of these policies, the old ones that have remained and the new ones that we've added, require some sort of ongoing coordination, help prioritizing them for different communities, outlining the mechanisms for how you're going to coordinate. And so one of the two main pieces of this are guidance on establishment of a regional planning committee of some sort that's a continuation of the PMT, where the communities all agree through an MOU or something to meet on an established, every other month or whatever, quarterly, whatever the number ends up being, who needs to be involved, what types of issues are going to be worked through at these meetings. And then we've got this table that helps prioritize the policies according to a wide range of factors. Things like, does this need to happen as part of the comp plan update? Is this a policy that is required to be implemented by state law, or is it more of a best practice, helping prioritize some of those different decisions? What's the timeline in which it needs to be implemented? Who needs to be, like, is it all the communities? Is it just the county and one of the cities? Sort of who has to be involved. And in the draft that gets released tomorrow, we're still working on that table, because the policies, we kind of don't want to put too much in there if policies are going to change based on feedback. So the final version that gets released by the PMT will have that full table, but the policies for this chapter are going to be in the draft that gets released tomorrow. So that is first of all, before I kind of go on to the procedural stuff, any questions about any of these, the fiscal impact, roles and responsibilities, economic development, transportation, UGAs? I think I definitely encourage all of you to take a look at that document when it gets released tomorrow. And John, we can discuss how to get that disseminated. Just any high level questions based on what I've been talking about so far on any of these issues for you all.
Hey, Matt, this is Felix. Again, I have a quick question.
Mhm.
At what point is the public informed, or there will be feedback from the public, or hearing, or some kind of public announcement?
Yeah, that's a great question, Commissioner Tan. So we did a little bit of public engagement earlier on in this process. We had a couple surveys that went out that the cities and the county advertised to try to get some feedback on this. The first one, actually, we got quite a bit of, I think we got like 50 or 60 responses, just kind of like what issues should the county and the cities coordinate on, just to kind of like raise awareness and get some feedback on what issues in particular seem important to folks. We also did one specific to housing that went out in May, I believe. As far as meetings go, the first when the PMT makes the recommendation on the initial draft in August, that's going to kickstart a 2 or 3 month process of meetings, and the Board of County Commissioners is going to have a hearing on this. All the jurisdictions are going to have to make the decision to adopt within that time frame, and that'll by the decision making bodies in each community, the cities and the county. So there's the county board is going to have a hearing on this, at least one, and each jurisdiction is going to have a public discussion on this as well. Any other questions?
Has there been ever instances where the public disagree and collect petition, and does that amount to anything in terms of adjusting the proposal, or totally change the direction that the city adopted?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. So the only entity that can appeal countywide planning policies is the governor. But communities can choose to, so what might happen if there was some issue in here, and I'd be surprised if there were any issues that rose to that level in here, because the chapters and the topics are very much the same as what's before. But I think what happens sometimes in this is that you have this thing that exists that a lot of people don't know about, and there's a potential that when you open it up that people go like, oh, what's in there? Like, what is that? And like, wait, that's been the rule for 30 years. Like, why didn't I know that? And then people get exercised to get about a particular topic. What could potentially happen is if enough people in a jurisdiction, say in the city of College Place, if people got really exercised about what one or more chapters, transportation or UGAs or something, they could, during this time frame when the PMT says, okay, here's our first draft, and when the adoption deadline is, could pressure the council to recommend changes or to ultimately not adopt. That's kind of up to the council, to the decision makers. But then that would influence the Board of County Commissioners' decision to either adopt or not adopt the CPP updates. Does that answer your question?
Matt,
yeah.
Matt, I should probably know the answer to this, but is there once the draft is released, is there a formal comment period on the draft before we move it to the Board of County Commissioners?
There's no formal comment period in the sense that the PMT is not a formal body that has kind of noticing requirements and responsibilities under the state law. However, the goal of the draft that we're finishing this week, which is like the initial draft, is that all the communities are going to we have a comment mechanism through the website for this project, which is hosted by the county. And what we're going to do is all the communities are going to put out like a press release and kind of invite comment from the public on this document. So even though it's not coming from the council or the planning commission or another group that has some sort of hearing-based authority, all the communities are making an effort to kind of get the word out and encourage public comment between this, sort of essentially tomorrow, assuming the county staff and I can work on getting the document up in a timely fashion, and the PMT meeting in August. So there's about a 3.5 week window in there when we're gonna be accepting comments through the county website mechanism. And then there's an additional, when the Board of County Commissioners decides to send the final draft, there's this slide shows kind of the process here. This is the formal approval process. The Board of County Commissioners they could recommend, based on feedback, they could recommend some changes to the draft CPPs. And then they say, okay, if these changes are made, we want to send this final draft to the cities for review and approval. That's what this step number one here is. That would kickstart the formal approval process, which is the time in which the city decision-making bodies have to review and act on that final draft. That means whatever outreach the cities want to do on this, and there'll have to be a vote by the council, and they can choose and should choose to invite public engagement, maybe hold a hearing, and then after that 90-day period, the Board of County Commissioners will conduct a public hearing on the final draft and may adopt or not adopt the CPP amendments. And this approval process is laid out in the interlocal agreement that the county has with all the cities. So this was something that was hammered out between the county and the cities at the start of this process back almost a year ago.
I have a quick question
Any
for my
other
own
questions? Yes.
training. For the scope of the chapter on transportation, is it largely just focused on like road infrastructure? There didn't seem to be a lot of reference, at least in the old document, to public transportation.
There is some additional public transit language put in there, largely around kind of how the goals and policies of the kind of the Valley Transit Master Plan get incorporated. So we did look at the Valley Transit and the MPO's planning around transit and some of the work that's been done, obviously since 1993, but their current like 2045 plan. We looked at what was going to be needed to be added to this, based on, for coordination between jurisdictions because of changes in transit planning. So yeah, we did definitely look into that. And you'll see tomorrow there's more than there was in the 1993 chapter. Any other questions? Oh, this baby stayed asleep. So all's well. John, any other questions or thoughts that you have to add before I get out of here?
I don't have anything additional to add. Thank you, Matt. Mr. Chairman, did you have any questions, or I'll allow you to close this topic if you so choose.
I really don't actually have any questions. It's something that excites me, and I'm looking forward to the draft document. And I had a question, but I answered it just in case somebody else hadn't caught it. The planning document that is in the agenda was the 1993 planning document. So tomorrow, then, I guess my only question would be, is sometime after that's released tomorrow, then you will then forward that to us? Yes?
Yeah, and that'll come through your staff, through John.
Yeah. Yes,
Wonderful.
we'll be getting that out to you all. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you for visiting with us and kind of giving us an update, sir.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate it.
Really appreciate your time tonight, everybody.
All right. Well, if we have no other questions, I propose we move on to reports. Do I need
That works.
Okay.
So the next item on your agenda is just an update on the Liberty House Plan project. There's a survey out, and I believe, was there a link in the agenda item? I can't remember if I put a link in.
There was.
Okay.
There was.
So please do take the survey, share it. The next steps will be finalized. Once we get feedback on the survey, we'll work with the consultant to select some final plans. And then I believe the process will be to move those through a plan review with our building official, and then development of a web page where those plans will be available for purchase to build in the city once they're approved. We focused on ADUs because we felt like there's a need in the community for some smaller units, and the prices on those plans are a little bit more affordable. And we thought that we might actually see more activity if we made the accessory dwelling units available. As you see in the survey, there's some different options there. I think there's a unit over a garage, and then I think there's a small duplex, which they're basically two cottages, I think, that are attached with like a covered porch or something, if I remember right. But they're also both small units, which would allow placement in backyards and also take advantage of the reduced connection charges for water and sewer. So any feedback on that is welcome, or any questions, be happy to take them now.
John, this is Brennan. Just a random question. I was kind of curious, do those plans from Liberty, are they going to come with an estimated build cost? I know that varies widely, minute by minute sometimes it seems, but I'm kind of curious if anything like that is available for individuals who are trying to plan a small ADU and looking at options kind of within a budget or price range. Is there anything like that that comes along with this kind of supplementary?
That is not part of the proposal. I will say it used to be pretty accurate when the valuations that we utilize used to be pretty accurate. If you kept the material selection reasonable, if you weren't trying to do it super fancy. So we could, based on square footage, we could tell somebody that, based on that information, it was going to cost you X number of dollars. And we can still do that. But again, the tables haven't kept up with inflation necessarily. So.
Sure. Okay.
Any other questions? All right, well, with that, I really don't have any other reports to provide to you. Not a whole lot of activity going on around the city. There are some development projects that you've probably seen going on, and I wasn't planning on giving any updates on those, but if there's any just general questions you want to throw out there, what's that? I could be more than happy to answer those right now, but otherwise, we could adjourn. Up to you.
I've got one question, John, and it's probably really more for the building department but the development behind the water tanks, have they moved forward with that, or is that dead in the water at this time?
They moved all the way to the finish line, but have not, so they have approved plans all the way from ground up to rooftop, but they have not paid for their permits.
Okay.
So we're still in a holding pattern.
Okay. So it sounds like we have no other business. Are there any closing items besides the next scheduled meeting in August?
Nope, none for me. Sorry.
Okay. Well, if we have no other questions or comments, I would entertain a motion to end our meeting for the evening.
So moved.
Second. With that in mind, any opposed? Sounds like none opposed. So I would say at this time, we are ending our meeting, the 419th regular planning commission meeting at 7:51. Thank you everybody for joining us this evening, and I look forward to next month.
Thank you.
And John, is that all we need to close out the evening? Are we gone, John? Or are we still here? All right. Have a lovely evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah.